When Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice came out in August of 2017, it did not exactly light the world on fire. However, that did not mean it wasn't special. It reviewed incredibly well and the word of mouth about the game was positive. It had a uniqueness to it. The story was dark, the world looked interesting, the graphics looked great, and it used binaural audio exceptionally well. It seemed to be a game that deserved a sequel, but it originally did not seem likely. One of the only sales updates came in June 2018, almost a year after its release. It only sold 1 million copies. However, this was actually a great milestone for the game because of its budget of 10 million. For this type of game, that's extremely low, and add the fact the team was reportedly about 20 people, it meant the game could easily recoup its costs. It turns out they did, because in December 2019 they announced Hellblade 2. The trailer was definitely Hellblade looking, and the visuals were stunning. They then released a trailer 2 years later in December 2021 showcasing a segment of Senua and others fighting a giant. Then the game went dark until June 2023 where we got a cinematic trailer. Though visually awesome, it really was just a 4-minute cutscene from the game. After this, the Game Awards at the end of 2023 showed off another trailer showcasing combat and other gameplay. But it was only at Xbox's Developer Direct in January 2024 that Hellblade 2 finally got a firm release date, May 21st, 2024. They did showcase footage surrounding the development, but almost no new game footage was shown. All in all, the game looks awesome and I have no complaints about the game itself. However, after this Xbox Direct, I could not get over one thing, and it's the issue I want to talk about. The development time on this game has been absolutely ridiculous. Games like this do not take this long to be developed. Now you may think, hey, stop being so hard on them, of course it will take long, they're a small developer. And I say no, that's absolutely not a valid excuse here. We have seen the original team of 20 with almost no budget create the first game. Now, double the team, add that huge Microsoft funding and budget, and suddenly the game takes twice as long to develop? It's unacceptable, and yes, this game has likely taken twice as long to develop. That trailer in December 2019 was in-engine footage, so this game had to have entered pre-production in 2018, likely around their sales announcement. That means to create Hellblade 2, reportedly a 7 to 9 hour game, Ninja Theory likely took 6 years. That's pretty insane.
Could you be any slower?
The first game took 3 years to develop and is essentially the same length. Again, let's make one thing clear, the game looks great, and I'm all for waiting longer so a game can be better, but that's not what is happening here. 6 years of development time for a 7-hour adventure is not sustainable. Think about the expenses. You're paying that staff for 6 years and all that marketing requires a lot of money. That all means the budget has to be astronomically higher, especially compared to the first game, which then means it needs to sell exponentially more copies because of the ever-growing costs. There are many other games I could compare this to, but the franchise I want to bring up is A Plague Tale because there's so many similarities, yet key differences when comparing it to Hellblade. Asobo Studio, the developers for A Plague Tale Innocence, had a team of 40 developers working on the game with a very low budget. The development was troubled, but they ended up releasing the game in May 2019. It was first teased in 2017, so the likely development time would be 3 to 4 years. This is pretty similar to Ninja Theory, who was a team of 20 creating a game over 3 years on a low budget. A Plague Tale Innocence also reached that 1 million sold milestone, the same as Hellblade 1. Once the sequel was greenlit, A Plague Tale's team grew to almost double to 70 people for its development. Again, similar to Ninja Theory's growth for its sequel. A Plague Tale Innocence was reportedly 10 to 12 hours long, so a little bit longer than Hellblade, but that's not a huge disparity. But now I want to look at the key differences. Asobo released the sequel, A Plague Tale Requiem, in October 2022, almost 3.5 years after the first game. It was received well critically and it built off the previous title. More notably, the game was much larger, with it requiring an estimated 15 to 20 hours to finish the game. Now let's go back to Hellblade 2. It's obviously building and expanding off everything from Hellblade 1, but it's the same length as the first game, and it is taking 5.5 to 6 years to develop. I get it, Hellblade and A Plague Tale are two different types of games, but one game was clearly made more efficiently. Now to be clear again, I don't care about the length of Hellblade 2. If 7 to 9 hours makes a great campaign, then awesome. However, what I care about is that it's taking years more than what it should need to create this sequel. So we come to the question, why is it taking so long? One thing is obvious, Hellblade 2 has had some serious internal delays. From a marketing perspective, you don't announce a short single-player game in 2019 and release it almost halfway through 2024. That it happened this way means it's been in development hell. So what delayed it? I'm sure COVID COVID did not help, but I don't think that was the main cause. In my opinion, it is a mix of two factors, so let's start with the first one. Let's start with Unreal Engine 5. When Hellblade 2 was announced at the end of 2019, developers spoke that the game was being built in the new Unreal Engine 5. Now looking back on this statement, there was a large problem. Unreal Engine 5 was not yet accessible for developers to use at that time. Early access for the engine was not until much later in May 2021, with the full release in April 2022. That inherently means that when Ninja Theory began developing Hellblade 2, it was not using Unreal Engine 5. Since Hellblade 1 used Unreal Engine 4, this meant what they had to do was make the game knowing they'll be switching from Unreal 4 to Unreal 5. In my opinion, this is where the delay occurred. Epic Games, the creator of Unreal Engine, touted that games being built in Unreal 4 could be switched to Unreal 5 with incredible ease. Given that years after early access, Hellblade 2 is still not out, I believe switching the game to Unreal 5 was incredibly difficult and turbulent, causing delays. Just imagine having half the game done only to find the majority of the game's assets are permanently screwed up or the animations are not working correctly. Of course, these may not have been the specific issues, but you get the point. This article came out in August 2022, confirming that the game officially was going to be in Unreal 5 on Xbox. At that point, nearly 3 years had passed since the announcement trailer, and yet Xbox was only then announcing the game would be in Unreal 5. Obviously, delays occurred and the engine makes the most sense. Though, as I said, there are two factors at play here, thus we come to the second factor, Xbox. You see, an Unreal Engine 5 delay does help cause the unacceptable development time of Hellblade 2, but it is simply a symptom of a larger issue, an issue Xbox can't seem to resolve. A majority of Xbox exclusives are taking ungodly long to release. Look at the large notable games Xbox has released over the last few years. Halo Infinite was delayed over a year and its seasonal content was constantly getting delayed. Redfall, largely considered a failure on every level, reportedly was in development for 5 years. Indiana Jones was first announced in January 2021 and did not get a trailer until January 2024. And though it says it releases in 2024, we're lucky if that's actually the case. Fable was announced back in July 2020, and it was not until June 2023 we got another trailer with absolutely no mention of a release timeframe. Guess what? If it comes out 2025, that's another game with 6 years of development time at a minimum. But what causes these long development cycles? Well, it has to do with management. Again and again there are reports of mismanagement at Xbox, which affects these video games. Halo Infinite famously had its issues, Phil Spencer admitted other management issues after the Redfall debacle, and it appears the trend continues with its upcoming exclusives. Hellblade 2 is probably going on 6 years of development, the next Elder Scrolls will be at least 5 to 6 years away since it's open world, and even Indiana Jones had to have started production in either 2020 or possibly late 2019. If it releases in late 2024 or is delayed to 2025, then that is yet again a 5 to 6 year development cycle for an Xbox exclusive. For a single player game that's not open world, by the way. Now this issue does not mean these games are bad quality, well sometimes, but it's an issue that needs resolving. Xbox is either managing these devs incorrectly or are not managing them enough. With constant development issues, Xbox repeatedly fails to release exclusives consistently. The only reason why these development troubles should not matter to Xbox is if the game has a lot of people playing it. Some Xbox games succeed, with Halo Infinite and Starfield having huge launches, but for Hellblade 2, the outlook is not as good. The first game was still niche, and its sequel is no different. This game is not exactly for the broader audience, and the sales and player count will reflect that. Even being free on Game Pass, it may be a game that a lot won't play. Hellblade 1 eventually crossed 6.3 million players, but that does not equate to sales, with likely a large chunk of that being gamers playing for free on Game Pass. With a bloated budget and long development cycle, it's gonna need a large player base. But Ninja Theory is of course aware of this because they're foregoing a physical release, which saves costs, as well as charging $50 for the game instead of $70, which could potentially draw more people in to buy the game. It's an interesting idea that may or may not benefit them.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Let me conclude by saying this. Hellblade 2 looks awesome, and it is likely going to be an amazing game. But my stance on the development of Hellblade 2 is not one of positivity. I am all for delaying a game in order for it to be great, but this situation is different. Here it is quite apparent this game should not have taken this long to be developed, and that it should have been done a lot quicker. That is a big issue, and an issue with Xbox in general. Now, this game could have taken long because of other things. Maybe Ninja Theory has too many grand ambitions with Hellblade 2. They talk about their impressive cloud forming technology, wanting the best facial animations, scanning in real clothes into the game, and more. They boast about what they're doing, as they should. However, this all leads to a challenge they need to overcome. Because of the development time and everything they've shown, Hellblade 2 has a lot of hype surrounding it. Sure, it is going to be a great game, but that's different than saying the game will live up to the hype. Ninja Theory needs this game to live up to the hype, and only time will tell if it does. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.